Good morning. Good morning, everybody. This is the Sabbath, the seventh day of the festival of unleavened bread, the Hag Hamatzah, that we celebrate each year. And this is a special day. We're going to find out that this is a very unique uh, day that's supposed to take us in a certain direction and let us circle back, so to speak, with regard to what we have been called to do on the first day and all 7 days, to circle back and have a time of accountability and a time of testimony as to what's happened. So I want to welcome you all who have joined us from across the world as we go live here. Right now we're on Facebook Live. Later you will be able to see us on YouTube. And then through the website, you can also access our YouTube broadcast through the website. It's on the Rabbi Sun page. So welcome. Good morning to you. Shabbat Shalom, wherever you may be, realizing the Sabbath may have already escaped you if you're as far east as Australia, New Zealand, Bangkok, Thailand, the issues there in the Philippines, wherever you may be. You may have already had that take place, but you're joining us for our Sabbath, so we're hoping you can prolong the sweetness of your Sabbath for a while. Join us. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you are, and let us know if we can pray for you in any way or answer any questions for you. Well, we ended last week at a certain stage, and I always like to remind you that we're in a sequential download. Everything that the Holy One does, he does in context. He does in sequence. It's a training program. The creator of the universe has ordained that he is going to bring mankind, and creation to a point of purpose and meaning and destiny. It's almost like when the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, brooded over the deep on the first day of creation. And it was without form and void, and darkness covered it. But as he moved over it and as he stirred something within it, he brought it to a point where there could actually be light, yehi or light be. Well, that is sort of what he does at all times. At all times, he's doing something. He's bringing us into the context. So I'd like to start today. We have a lot to talk about, and it's very important things to talk about that will hopefully stir your spirits and cause you to rejoice and rise up in many ways. But before we do that, we need to remember where we are in the great context. And we ended last week. Parsha Zav came to its conclusion, the second Parsha of the book of Leviticus, or Vayikra. And so we ended in chapter 8, and I want us to stand and we'll read from that Parsha. We will recite the blessing of the house for those of you who know it and join along with us, and those who haven't heard it before or don't remember what it says, just listen and enjoy, hopefully, and smile. We will seek to find the beauty of the Lord and what he does. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us. Our souls cry out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your word. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Amen. We're going to be in chapter 8 of Leviticus, beginning with verse 30. And this will get us our context as to what this day is all about and what we will be talking about. It is part of the seventh day in that matter, a seventh day of the great consecration period for Aharon and his sons, the priests. And it's in verse 30. Then Moshe took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood which was on the altar, and he sprinkled it on Aharon, on his garments, and on his sons, and on the garments of his sons with him. And he consecrated Aaron, his garments, his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. And Moshe said to Aaron and his sons, boil the flesh at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and eat it there with the bread that is on the basket of consecration offerings, as I commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons are to eat it. And what remains of the flesh and of the bread you are to burn with fire. And you are not to go outside the door of the tabernacle of meeting for 7 days until the days of your consecration are ended. For 7 days he will set you apart, kadosh you. And as he has done this day, so the Holy One has commanded you to do, to make atonement for you, And therefore you are to stay at the door of the tabernacle of meeting day and night for 7 days, and keep the charge of the Holy One, so that you may not die, for I have been so commanded. And so Aaron and his sons did all the things that were commanded by the hand of Moshe. Amen. You may be seated. You see how the 7 days correspond, hopefully, the 7 days that we referenced at the end of Parshat Zav. Every year at this time, right before the Passover season, we read Parshat Zav to talk about the 7 days of consecration. 7 days through which we are set apart. 7 days through which the work is done in heaven on our behalf, but we participate, we collaborate, we cooperate with what he is doing. 7 days we trust in him. We let our emunah grow. We let our belief that he is doing something good in us and around us and through us and for us and in the world around us, that he is doing these things. And no matter what it looks like on the outside, we turn all the TVs off, so to speak. We turn the news off. We turn the outside world off, and we focus on what's happening in his tabernacle. We become courtiers in the great scale model replica of the throne room of heaven. We begin to get familiar with the instruments, the instrumentalities, the avodah, the services of the Mishkan. We begin to let the oil of Messiah rush over us, arise from us. We begin to focus, this is more important than the things of the world, and these things must happen for us to go to the next step. So we see this the correspondence of the 7 days of consecration for HaKohanim, the priest, with the 7 days of unleavened bread that we each one have done. 7 days, 7 days. When you see sevens, you realize you're about to see a great explosion, a telescoping of events into the spiritual realm. So here we are, the 7th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Shavi Shel Pesach, the 7th of Pesach. What is this day? Interestingly, the Torah tells us this is a moed. This 7th day is a moed. It's not just the first day or the 7 days total. There's also a special thing that we're supposed to do. As a matter of fact, it talks about it in several places, and it used several different languages, different terms. We're going to talk about the different terms that are applied to this 7th day, that Torah tells us this day is to be for us. One of them is a Sabbath, and it just so happens that this year it corresponds with the weekly Sabbath. So we have a double Sabbath today. So when I say Shabbat Shalom, I'll say Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, okay? For those of you who are here, and for those of you who are watching. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. It's a double Sabbath for you. And receive that blessing, that double portion blessing of the Shalom, the peace of God, the wealth, the wisdom, the holiness, the Kedusha energy of that Sabbath. But it's more than just a Sabbath. We're going to kind of discuss this. But I want to call this something that's been called for years, for decades, no, for centuries, no, for millennia. For millennia, this has gotten a name. This the 7th day has been given a name. And it is Mashiach's Seulah, the feast of Messiah, the Messiah's feast. This is what the sages have called this for this, at least the 2nd or 3rd century. And this language, this idea of it being Messiah's feast, it's like before we re-enter the world, before we re-enter the common, the ordinary of life, before we put bread in our mouths again, before we re-enter the realm of the natural, we really need to circle back. And we really need to spend some time not just studying Torah, although that is a life-giving source, but studying Torah with its master, the Messiah himself. And so today is our day to feast with the Messiah. Today is our day to remind ourselves that though we know him, we don't know him near well enough. Though we have met him, we have not endured, we have not gone through, we have not experienced life with him the way he has called us to. We have tasted him. We have felt the fringes. We have seen the fringes of who Messiah is. Oh, but there's so much more. There's so much more to who he is and what he does. And if we try to go through all of the Torah, if we try to go through all of life, if we try to go through all the experiences of humanity without a fresh, renewed sense of the presence and the unity of the person of Messiah, we will miss so much. So this is our sweet day of remembering the Messiah, of thinking about him, of focusing our attention on him, of connecting with him. Mashiach's Seudah, Messiah's feast. A special feast that is designed to awaken in us the hunger, the desire, the craving for Messiah's return. To long for the day of his appearing. To long for not just having the experience we have with him, but to have an up-close, personal experience where the world sees him the way we see him, where he is seen not only as a figment of some people's imaginations, not only as an ethereal being in another world, where he is the Messiah for the entire world, where he rules and reigns upon the earth, where his word is like life and a river of life flowing forth from him into our world. So welcome. Now, why is the seventh day Messiah's feast? How did the sages, how did the traditions come about that this was our day to focus so heavily upon Messiah? Well, it comes out largely from the fact that the seventh day of unleavened bread, the seventh day after the Passover, was the day of what? The Sea of Reeds. For 7 days, we were moved back and forth after we left Egypt for 7 days, and we camped at various different locations. We camped at Sukkot. It moved us back and forth to basically be a red flag in the mind of Pharaoh. And finally, at the end of 7 days, Pharaoh came charging after us with his chariots. And in the evening of the seventh day, we saw the chariots. We saw the clouds of smoke rising from the desert floor. This is our story. This is our family history. This is our covenant history. This is as real as anything about our lives. The dust was arising from the dunes, and the sound of the thundering horse steps were coming into our ears, and the sea was behind us, and there was no place to go, and we were doomed. There was no way out, that we were trapped, and Pharaoh seemed to know it, and as sensing we were doomed and we had nowhere to go, he charged faster and screamed louder, and the hate and the anger, we had seen it before, but now we saw it in its fullest manifestation. How much hate human beings can have for us. How much anger, how much genocidal rage people can have toward us. You see taste of it from time to time. In our world today, we're seeing it. But this was the fullness, the fulfillment of all of the hate, of the genocidal rage of humanity now coming to bear in one point in space, in one point in time. And the thundering hoofbeats and the clouds of smoke, dust arising from the dunes, and the sense of hopelessness. At this point in Exodus chapter 14, the Holy One stirs the heart of Moshe. And in his heart, he speaks to me and he says, stand. I know you're paralyzed with fear. I know you're afraid. I know you want to run and hide. I know you want to fight. Stand. Stand and see something. Someone. Cease. Stand and see. And in English, all you get is the salvation of our God, or the deliverance of our God. But in the Hebrew... In the Hebrew text, you see something far greater than that. Stand on the seventh day of unleavened bread. Stand and see Yeshuat Adonai, the Messiah, the Yeshua of the Holy One. Stand and see him. Now, we're in the seventh day, and the seventh day, like I say, telescopes into eternity. And so what's going to happen, the one thing they're not going to see is Yeshua Adonai. They won't see it. They will see the waves part. They will see dry land appear underneath where there was water. They will see a pathway made where they could not go, but they will not see Yeshua Adonai yet in their natural eyes. Oh, but their spirit will be awakened, and they will know he lives. They will know he will come. And so it was by faith, not by sight, that they walked across the waters. Through the waters. It was by trust that Yeshua Adonai was coming, the fullness of the trust that he was coming, that he is going to deliver us, that he is going to do all the things that he does, the Messiah does. This was what led them across those waters. And when they crossed the waters, on the seventh day, when they crossed between the parted waters of the sea and got to the other side, and safely they arrived, all 3 million or so of them, with the women and with the children and with the mixed multitude of all the nations, had all come through the sea together. They saw the waters come back together. They saw the waters congeal. They saw the Egyptians drown. They saw the armor floating up to the surface. And they knew the bridge had been burned. They knew their oppressors, those who had genocidal rage for them, who could not be deterred, had been destroyed. They knew they had a new life. They had no life back where they came from, only a life going forward. And they knew that Yeshua Adonai would be their guide wherever they went. He would be their hope wherever they went. And so this is the reason why the seventh day of unleavened bread, remembering the Sea of Reeds and the experience of the Sea of Reeds, and those words that Moshe spoke that still ring in our ears. Stand and see, though you will not see. Stand and see Yeshua Adonai. Well, this is that special day. It is our appointed time to circle back, as I've mentioned a few times. I use that term with a smile on my face because that's sort of a political hot word right now, hot phrase, and I'm not trying to be political, but we're circling back. We have to come back to a certain place at the end of the 7 days and have sort of an accountability true-up. Anybody know what matzah fatigue is? Some of you are smiling and laughing and chuckling. Matzah fatigue is that sense of, where's my donut? Why can't I eat a sandwich, a regular sandwich? I'm so tired of this matzah. I'm so tired of this matzah. This is so hard. True up time. This was a test. This was your test. This was your test. This 7 days of eating matzah, of eating things that don't have much flavor, that don't have the taste that you're used to, that don't have the texture you're used to, that don't allow you just to indulge yourself, that require you to self-deny. This has been your test. True up, circle back. Here we are, accountability day. Mashiach says, look, if you can't handle 7 days of unleavened bread, you're going to have a hard time with what's coming. If I told you what's coming, you wouldn't want to go. But 7 days of unleavened bread is just that first little, are you willing to even try? Are you really even to walk with me this far in this 7 days? This is a test. Have you been and will you be faithful in small things? I have met many friends who come into the Torah late in life, and they say, I can handle just about anything, but that 7 days of matzah, that kills me. And I understand. I mean, it requires self-denial. It requires control. It requires seeing something valuable at the end of this that is not found in the immediate experience of it. It requires letting emunah be our guide point, trust, faith, be our guide point as opposed to experience, like the Sea of Reeds. Now, this is that process of will we be faithful? Have we been faithful thus far with the little things of the 7? How are we doing? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands if you accidentally had a donut or a sandwich this week. I'm not going to ask you to go through that process. Some of you are looking at me like, how did you know? And others are looking at me like, well, didn't everybody? Or I didn't even know some of these things process. Now, how are we doing with the small things? Because we are following a great king on a great mission for a great plan and a great purpose for this earth. 7 days isn't even boot camp. And matzah isn't even what you get through when you go through a boot camp. Well, how are we doing on being faithful in small things? Second question that we can ask ourselves today is, when the Son of Man comes, when Yeshua Adonai really does come and we really do see him with our eyes, will he find faith? Will he find emunah? Will he find faithful ones on the earth? This is just a 7-day test. How about the generations? How about the time period between his ascension and his return? How are we staying faithful in the small things during this period of time? When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith? Will he find emunah? Will he find people of emunah on the earth? And then will you not only endure complaining, a season of self-denial, maybe an extended season of self-denial, but will you rejoice in it? And will you thrive in the midst of it because you are able to grow closer to him through it? Now, this is the Feast of Messiah is a very unique feast because it's a feast when he says, am I worth it to you? Am I worth even 7 days of unleavening for you? Is my persona and my calling, it is my plan, and is my relationship with you worth you enduring and then not even complaining? Because why would I complain when the King of glory has abided with me and led me and walked me through this and pulled me unto himself? This is our test of the 7 days. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, everybody knows the end of this passage, the end of this verse that Moshe taught us, but they don't know the first part of it. It's one of those convenient forgetting. The end of it says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that issues forth from the mouth of the Holy One. Man shall not live by matzah alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Holy One, every one that issues forth from his mouth. That's how the verse ends. Yeshua quotes it in the desert with the wilderness in his season of deprivation, self-deprivation. This is his quote. But it has a context. And its Torah context is scandalous, to say the least. Remember, Moshe says, that the Holy One, your God, led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness, which midbar is midbar. The Holy One led you all these 40 years midbar, to humble you and to test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would treasure, cherish, keep, guard his mitzvot, his instructions for life, or whether you wouldn't. Can we just skip this part, right? No, this is the reality of the part. So he humbled you, and he allowed you to hunger, and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man is not to live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of the Holy One. We are to live by Exodus 14, 13, and 14. Stand and see Yeshua Adonai. And every word that proceeds from his mouth will tell us to stand and stand and stand. So he leads us to this desert. Everything we've done. So after the matzah is gone, we have to ask ourselves, though. You know, we only packed a certain amount of matzah when we left Egypt. You know he didn't tell us to do this, right? There's no instruction to pack matzah. This is not a commandment. We chose to pack matzah. Not knowing what was ahead of us. Not knowing how we would ever be fed out there in the wilderness. We packed enough matzah for maybe 3 to 7 days. Now we're at the end of the matzah. We come through the sea. After the Sea of Reeds, the water is now polluted. What shall we drink? The matzah's gone that we prepared and stuck in our backpacks. It's gone, so what shall we eat? Now you get the test. He humbled you. He made you hungry for a reason, to test you, to see what was in your heart, to see if you would listen to his and follow and walk in his instructions, or whether you would not. It's all circle back time. This is accountability day. So, what will we eat? What will we drink? We must trust the Holy One. And so we come to the seventh day of of unleavened bread, Shvi Shel Pesach. And according to the Torah, the seventh day is to be engaged in and participated in multiple ways, 7 different ways. It's 7 times 7. So we're going to see 7 ways we're supposed to engage with this seventh day. The first one is it is to be engaged in as a moed, an appointed time. The seventh day, not just all 7 days, but the seventh day uniquely is a moed. And what is a moed? Now, appointed time. It means it's a time to have a meeting, a time to have a conversation. An appointed time, like you go to see a doctor, you go to see a lawyer, you go to see an engineer, somebody, plan your houses, you have a meeting is scheduled, you go at a certain time, and you have a conversation about that time. And this is our moed. We're supposed to have a moed today on the 7th day of unleavened bread. Appointed time to meet with the Holy One, a circle back, an accountability time to Him. Secondly, we are to have a Mikra Kodesh. English, you're going to read several things. Solemn assembly. I don't remember what all else, the different ways you see it written down. Holy convocation, I think I've seen in some. These are some of the terms that you see in English. But the Hebrew phrase that's used by the Holy One and by Moshe to describe this day is a Mikra Kodesh, a calling forth of holiness. We are to have a calling forth of something from you today. If something's going to be called out of you, called forth out of you, I'm not talking about any unclean spirits you may have, although those may come out too. He's calling forth holiness from you. The Holy One wants to call forth from you holiness. He wants you to call it forth from each other. He wants your presence, your appearance, your connection to call forth a holiness, a level of holiness that didn't exist there before, Mikra Kodesh. So we have a Moed. The 7th day is a Moed. The 7th day is a Mikra Kodesh. The 7th day is a Sabbath. It's a Shabbat. It is a day. He says no work is to be, no melacha. No, and he says you can feed yourself. You can do what you got to do to feed yourself. But this is not a day of work. This is a Shabbat. So we have a Moed. We have a Mikra Kodesh. We have a Shabbat. There's 3 things already of the 7 that this day is. The 4th thing is it's a Hag. This is the only day. It's a Hag. What's a Hag? I don't mean a H-O-G pig. That would be not right. A Hag. Chet Gimel. A Hag. And what is a Hag? A Hag is a celebration. It's a dance. It's movement. It's choreographed movement. It's responsive movement and dancing. It's joy. It's celebration. We are to celebrate this day. Now, that's an amazing thing that we have a day of accountability. We're supposed to celebrate on a day of accountability. Rejoice and dance with the Holy One on this day. So it's a Moed, it's a Mikra Kodesh, it's a Shabbat, and it's a Hag, a feast, a celebration where we dance. And it's also a Hagid. A Hagid is, you read another word, Haggadah, right, from Passover, the Passover. A Haggadah is the little booklet you read, which tells a story. Hagid means to tell a story. We're supposed to tell our children a story today. We're supposed to tell each other. We're supposed to recite our testimony. We're supposed to rehearse the things that have happened in storytelling form. As you noticed at the beginning of this discussion, I tried to make as much of a story as I could out of the 7th day at the Sea of Reeds. I hope you felt the power of the story, because it's awakening something in you. It's not my storytelling capacity. It's the power of the story that lives within you eternally. So to awaken that power of the story, the power of the testimony, because we are, of all things, beyond everything, we are witnesses. We are witnesses. That's what we're called to be. We're supposed to tell a story. We're supposed to have a story. We're supposed to be caught up in the middle of a story, and we're supposed to tell that story and tell it joyfully and bear glad tidings and good news to the world about this good story. So this is a Hagid day as well, a storytelling, a rehearsal. And it's supposed to be an oath, a sign, a covenant, a symbol of covenant, a mark that says these people are in covenant with the creator of the universe. There's no other explanation for this. These folk are different. They got a mark on them. They got a mark on their mouth. They got a mark on their head. Actually, it's supposed to be a sign on your hand. An oath on your hand. This is what the 7th day is when you tell your story. This is to be like who you are, identifying factor of who you are and where you've been. When do you get a mark on your hand? Well, you used to get one when you get to the bar, right? You go to the bar or the dance, and you had to get a mark on your hand to prove that you were there. You'd paid your admission, and you'd gone through the process, and that way you could always be let back in. Everybody knew you'd been to that dance. You'd been to that bar. Well, this is a mark on a sign on your hand. This is the symbol that we are actually in covenant with him. We've come to his meeting. We've done the dance. We've rehearsed the holiness. We've been called up, arising with the holiness in us, and therefore we are his. So it's an oath, and it's a zikron. It is something we are to actively engage with. Zikron is usually translated as a remembrance or a commemoration. It's active. It's not something you do in your head only. It starts in your head, but it acts out its way out in various different actions. This is why we call it the Messiah's feast, because we actually have a celebration. We get our matzah, our last matzah we're going to eat toward the end of this day. And we get traditionally they use 4 cups of wine again, just like they do, 4 glasses of wine again, like they did on the first night. And so it's really the second half of the Seder is actually what's done. And this celebration is not about the past, it's about the future. It's about this great deliverance that the Holy One is, about Yeshua Adonai being seen. As we stand, he will be seen. This is that process of what it's about. So, a zikron, how will we actively engage with this? How will we commemorate it? How will we teach our children through actions and teach our families through the way we behave this particular special Sabbath, the seventh day? Will we end as strong as we began? I mean, I know we're all hungry every time we get to this time of year. I don't mean hungry in the sense of you want food. You're hungry to participate in Passover. That first Seder, that first night, the first dipping of the unleavened bread in bitter herbs, the first taste of the wine, the first remembrance is so sweet to us. And then comes day 2. And then there's day 3. And nothing much is happening now. We're just not eating. What we're not eating, we're thinking about, not what we are eating. We're eating matzah, but we're not eating unleavened bread. And day 4, day 5, and then, as we talked about, matzah fatigue sets in. Day 6. Now, are we going to finish this race strong? Are we going to stay strong throughout? Or are we going to be like a balloon with a hole in it? We were all pumped up at the beginning. We were all excited about the things that were set for us. But now, so he says, no, I want to have a circle back. I want to test your air level, your ruach level, at the end of your 7 days, as I did at the first of your 7 days. So we have a zikron, a remembrance. If you want to know where these passages, where I get this stuff, that the seventh day is all this special stuff, they are just the passages of Torah. The Torah tells us very clearly. Exodus 12, I'll go through these. Exodus 12:16 says, on the first day there is to be a Mikra Kodesh. That was 7 days ago. On the 7th day shall be a Mikra Kodesh for you. No matter if Melachah is to be done on these days, everyone must eat so that things may be prepared by you. Leviticus 23:8. Second part says, the 7th day is to be a Mikra Kodesh. On it, Kol Melachet Avodah Lo Haso. No ordinary work of service shall be done. Deuteronomy 16:8. 6 days you are to eat unleavened bread. On the 7th day there shall be a Mikra Kodesh. Unto the Holy One your God you are to asah, build, make no melachah on it. Exodus 13:5-10. When the Holy One brings you into the land, for 7 days you are to eat matzot, and on the 7th day, a Hag Ladonai, a festival, a feast unto the Holy One. And you are to tell your son, Magid, you are to tell your son in that day, saying, this is done because of what the Holy One did for me when I came up out of Egypt. And it is to be a ot, a sign to you, on your hand, and a zikron between your eyes, in your field of vision, that the Holy One's Torah may be in your mouth. Now we get the point, that the Holy One's Torah may be in your mouth. What do we not live by bread alone, but by his Torah may be in your mouth. With a strong hand the Holy One has brought you out of Egypt. You are therefore to shamar this hukah lemoedah, this instruction or ordinance of meeting from year to year. All right. So, this is our special Sabbath. Recalling the parting of waters at the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, actually. There's some fascinating things about what it really is, this Yom Suf. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later. It's also, it's telling stories and singing songs in many cases. I would get my guitar out and I'd play some songs and music, but we've got copyright issues because we're online, so I won't do that. But what I will do is say this is a day for singing songs and telling stories about the redemption to come, about who Messiah is and who he will be and what he will do for us and how he has, what he's already done for us, but what he will also do for us. Telling stories and singing songs that remind us and prepare us in our homes for the future redemption. If we just done Passover to remember the past, if we just done Passover, remember what happened in Yeshua's life whenever he came the first time. If that's all we have done, we have missed the greater point. And this is why we're circling back. Don't forget what's to come. Don't forget the good news. Don't forget the story that yet to be told. Don't forget this is a day of the future redemption. And the future redemption will eclipse the last redemption. The future redemption, the future story will be greater than anything that happened to you back at the Sea of Reeds. Greater than anything that happened on the night of before the crucifixion, or the day of the crucifixion, or the day of the resurrection, or the day of the ascension. What will be happening in the earth will be greater than those events. The best has yet to come. That's the basic story of the second Exodus and of this Feast of Messiah. Behold, the days are coming, Jeremiah. Prophet Jeremiah. Behold, the days are coming. Let this just ring into your ears. Let this become in your mouth. This is part of your story. Not just what's happened. Not just the redemption that's been wrought for your home and your family. But what's coming for the future for your bloodline. And for the bloodlines of all the nations of the earth. Behold, the days are coming, says the Holy One, that I will raise to David a branch of righteousness. Who is that branch of righteousness? Yeshua, Adonai. A king who will reign and prosper and execute judgment and righteousness in the earth. In his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell safely. His name by which he will be called will be Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Zidkenu, the Holy One, our righteousness. And therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Holy One. And they won't any longer say, as the Holy One lives, who brought up Bnei Israel from the land of Egypt. But they will say, as the Holy One lives, who brought up and led the descendants of Beit Israel, the house of Israel, from the north country and from all the countries where I had driven them, and they will dwell in their land. Stand and see. That's the Yeshua Adonai. That's what we have hope for. That's what we have the purpose of driven by. That there will be this grand second Exodus, this grand redemption to take place. And this is enough to keep us going through waters that part and through lion dens where the lions' mouths will not open. This is what keeps us through the fires because the Yeshua Adonai will be seen. So this is a day to elevate. Come up here. I hope you're already there. I hope you're already sensing, you feel a call upward, the upward call. The sense of awakening in you, of destiny, something more than what you've experienced, more than the religion you know, more than even the Torah that you know, more than the relationship with Messiah that you've ever had. This is calling you to a deeper level of Messiah. This is a day to elevate and transform our personal lives and our places of abode, our houses, our communities, our cities, our workplaces. We're here to make way. Prepare ye the way. Make straight the mountains and the hills. Make them level. Make a level place. Make a way. Make a runway for the Holy One to come wherever you are. To any sphere of influence He has assigned you over. Find a way. You can't make them perfect. That's not the deal. Make a way where there is a running board, a runway for the Holy One to land His holiness into. That's all you are called to do. To commit, they will be turned into sanctuaries of immense holiness. It's a day to prepare our hearts and our homes for the wedding supper of the Lamb. Now, the book of Revelation sort of brings this all to bear in chapters 19, 20, 21, 22. You see this beautiful picture being taken. Something's happening at the end of the day. You know, I mean, a lot of sermons have been preached, especially around this time of year, about it is finished. And some of it is, but the biggest part ain't. The biggest part's yet to come. The biggest part yet to be done. And that's what the book of Revelation, the 19, 20, 21, 20, that's telling you about the story to come. Exodus, the Jeremiah is trying to tell you about the story of what's to come, the great things that he'll do. And we'll talk about some of those things. A day to prepare our hearts and our homes for the wedding supper of the Lamb. A day to bring faith to life, to bring vision into visibility, to bring belief into practical experience and application. That's our calling. It's a Havdalah. Havdalah is a separation, a special moment of separation when we realize we're coming. We've made our ascent into the heavenly realms. We have walked in the tabernacle, the temple. We've been courtiers at the throne room of God. We have been in a holy place getting holy downloads. We have been at home with angels and cherubim and seraphim. We've been at home with saints through the ages. We've been at home through heavenly host. And the Holy One himself, we have been in his presence, but we're coming back down now to live in the earth, to rejoin humanity, to rejoin the troubles of life, of making a living and dealing with neighbors and family members. And we've got to come back into reality. So we come to this passage at the end of every Sabbath. We have a Havdalah. We change as the night begins. We smell the fragrance of the spices of Sabbath for the last time, and we waft the smell throughout the room that it might carry into the next year, next week. And so this is what it is with the seventh day of Passover. We're coming to our Havdalah moment, when we're going to say, okay, this 7 days has been stunning and awakening, but now we got to go in and face the world. We're through with the unleavening. Now it's time to re-leaven. So what are we going to carry with us when we re-leaven? What are we going to re-leaven with? We're going to go back to the same old thing? Or we're going to go back to the same old influences? Or we're going to go back to the same old news broadcasts, to the same old stories, same old complaints that people are telling? Are we going to come back to the same old? Are we going to re-leaven with the same stuff we unleavened from? Heaven forbid that we re-leaven with the same stuff we unleavened from. What will we re-leaven with? What happened on the seventh day? Well, after the seventh day, the first thing that happens is that the Holy One comes and he begins to give us manna. Our matzah is gone. What will we eat? We'll eat manna. We'll get water from a rock. We'll get water supernaturally. Revelation streams flowing. And we'll get manna from heaven. And so supernaturally from heaven, we'll get things that don't exist, couldn't happen, can't happen in the natural realm. And this is what, and the seventh day after the sea, what did we also do? We touched heaven with our songs. We didn't actually take our songs to heaven. We brought his songs down from heaven to earth. That was not a song somebody wrote on earth. Moses didn't write that. Miriam didn't write that. Nobody choreographed it. It happened because heaven touched earth. That was the leavening that we're supposed to bring in. Now, how do we connect? How do we connect with this? The Havdalah, our appointed time to re-enter the mundane realm, and to re-engage with the leaven sources of this world from a totally different elevation, with a totally different motivation, with a sense of stand and see Yeshua Adonai even in this. If you don't do this, you'll be frustrated by what the news says. You'll be angry about what people are doing, what the bad people are saying, and what the bad people are doing. It will make you crazy. He says, no, come in with the leaven, the new leaven of Yeshua Adonai, and he will indeed redeem this. What is going to happen is not what they say is going to happen. Not what the news says is going to happen. Not what the politicians say are going to happen. What is going to happen is, behold, the redemption is coming. What is going to happen is Yeshua Adonai will appear and do what he does. And we'll see what he does in just a moment. On the last day of Passover, the tradition says, the Talmud says actually, on the last day of Passover, the light and the final redemption of our righteous Messiah will be revealed. So telescope up about something's going to happen in the future on the seventh day of Passover. That's just the Talmud would tell you that. Whether you want to buy that or whether you want to believe that is up to you. I'm not going to tell you have to or don't have to. I'm saying that at least people whose parents and grandparents actually lived the story, that's what they're saying. You want to believe people who are writing books, people who are talking on YouTube, go ahead. But if you want somebody whose family history is tied up in this, you might want to consider that they may not be as far off as you may think they are. So On the last day of Passover, the light and the final redemption of our righteous Messiah will be revealed. Light, his light. He said, I am the light of the world. And who are we? We are the light of the world in him. So his light, him and us are flowing together. And his final, his righteous redemption. That's what will be revealed. Whew. Now, it's very interesting because one of the things that, again, I always throw out tradition to you. I give you the option of whether you wish to follow it or listen to it or not. This is a very famous statement by Maimonides, Rambam. This is the 12th and 13th principles of his 13 principles of faith. The 12th and 13th principles of Rambam, statement of Hebrew faith, I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Messiah. And though he tarry, I will wait for him. 13. I believe with perfect faith that the dead will be brought to life when God wills that to happen. Now, so we have this issue of the resurrection of the dead. We have this issue of the resurrection, the coming forth of all the peoples. Well, this is part of the things we look forward to, and this is what the Messiah does. Now, special reading on this day has been historic for years, and that's Isaiah 11. So I commit to you, if you want to have a reading this afternoon after we leave this place, after you spend your last few hours and you have your feast of Messiah, Messiah's feast, read chapter 11, verse 1 and following. Let me just give you a foretaste. There will come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch will grow forth out of his roots, and the Spirit, the Ruach of the Holy One, will rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of intimate personal knowledge and a fear of the Holy One. And his delight will be in the fear of the Holy One. And he will not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness he will issue judgments regarding the poor. And he will decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. But righteousness will be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness will be the belt of his waist. And the wolf will also dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling will lie down together, and the little child will be the leader. And a cow and a bear will graze together, and their young ones will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like an ox, and the nursing child will play by the cobra's hole, and a weaned child will put his hand in the viper's den. And they will not hurt. There will be no destruction on my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Holy One as the waters cover the sea. Hey, we just got started. Chapter 11, verse 1 into chapter 12. I'll give you that. In that day there will be a root of Jesse, who will stand as a banner to the people. And the Gentiles, the nations, will seek him. For his resting place will be glorious. And it will come to pass in that day that the Lord will set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, those who are left from Assyria to Egypt, from Patros and Cush, from Elam and from Shinar, from Hamat, and from all the islands of the sea. He will set up a banner for the nations, and he will assemble, regather the outcasts of Israel. And he will join and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Also, the jealousy of Ephraim will depart, and all the adversaries of Judah will be cut off. And Ephraim will not envy Judah, and Judah will not harass Ephraim. but they will fly down upon the shoulder of the Philistines toward the west. And together they will plunder the people of the east. They will lay their hand on Edom and Moab, and the people of Ammon will shema them. And the Holy One will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt. With his mighty wind he will shake his fist over the river. He will strike it into 7 streams, and men will cross over dry shod. And there will be a highway for the remnant of his people who will be left from Syria, as it was from Israel in the day that he came up from the land of Egypt. And in that day you will say, O Holy One, I will praise you. Though you were wroth with me, your anger has turned away, and you've comforted me. Behold, Yeshuati, El Yeshuati, God is my salvation, and I will trust and not be afraid. For Yah, the Holy One, is my strength and my song. He has also become my Yeshua. Therefore, with joy you will draw water from the wells of Yeshua. Yes, that's a lot of that comes from the Song of the Sea. This is Isaiah prophesying. See, the Song of the Sea is not over yet. All the verses of the Song of the Sea have not yet been sung. All the truth and the wisdom and the passion of the Song of the Sea is yet welling even now in the breasts of his people. In the hearts of the people of the covenant of God, the stirring power, the passion for Mashiach, for who he is, to sing the Song of the Sea, the heaven song. So what will Mashiach do? You know, I found the Holy One, or he found me, in the midst of the Jesus movement of the 70s, early 70s. And it was all about him, but we didn't know who he was. We knew enough about who he was to where we were caught up in the passion of the beauty of his persona, but it was like we got a whiff of who he was. And that's why we read the Torah, we read the prophets, we read the writings, we read the stories, we read the Revelation, we read the letters of Kepha and the people. We read to find out who he is. Who is this King of Glory? Who is this? Well, what will Messiah do? After a great war, this is the way I'm going to summarize it. After a great war, at the height of which he will appear dramatically and intervene on our behalf, Messiah will rebuild the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And he will make it a house of prayer for all nations and all ethnicities to come to. And that's not all. He will regather all the scattered seed of Abraham, all the exiles, all the captives will be brought home from all the corners of the earth, along with a mixed multitude of all the nations that will come with them. He will resurrect the dead that have fallen asleep in him. And he will reward them according to their emunah, how they did on their circle back day of accountings. He will reward them according to their emunah by assigning them cities and regions upon the earth to govern and oversee on his behalf as his representatives and his delegates. And behold, the tabernacle of God will be with man, and he will be our God, and we will be his people. And he will teach us his ways, the way a rabbi teaches his disciples. And we will walk in his path the way disciples walk in the dust of their rabbi. According to the ancient legend, at the end of days, there will be an epic battle between two beasts. Some of you know it is the battle of Gog and Magog. Some of you know it is the battle of the great giant ox and Leviathan. What you call it doesn't matter. Not to me, at least. In Isaiah 21 and 27:1 and following, it says, "And that day the Holy One, with his severe sword, great and strong, will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent. Leviathan, that twisted serpent. And he will slay the reptile that is in the sea. And it will come to pass in that day that the Holy One will thresh from the channel of the river of the brook to the brook of Egypt. And you will be gathered one by one, O you children of Israel. And so it will be that day that the great trumpet will be blown. And they will come who are about to perish in all the lands. of Assyria, and those who are outcast in the land of Egypt. And they will worship the Holy One in the holy mountain at Jerusalem. And then in Psalm 74:14, it says, you will break the heads of Leviathan in pieces and give him as food to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Well, so we see this climactic battle in which the Holy One, Messiah himself, appears, and he intervenes on our behalf. Remember at the Sea of Reeds, it was in the context of a great climactic battle that he said, stand and see Yeshua Adonai. And this is the ultimate plan, that we will actually see Yeshua Adonai. And all men will see him, from the east to the west, as far as those things are apart. The lightning will flash, we will all see him. And then here's what we'll sense. What will we get? Song of Songs, chapter 2, beginning with verse 9. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. He stands behind our wall, watching through the windows, peering through the lattice. And my beloved speaks, and he says to me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past. The rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of singing has come. It's time for the next verse of the Song of the Sea. And the voice of the turtle dove is heard in the land. The fig tree puts forth its green figs, and the vines with tender grapes give a good scent. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. So to one sense, he is this powerful, conquering king, soldier, warrior. To us, however, he'll always be something else. Mashiach, who we pause to celebrate on this seventh day, whose feast we rejoice in, who we dance with. He is our beloved, who calls to us from behind the lattice where we can't see him, but we know he's there. And he moves, and a voice comes out, arise, my beloved, arise, my love, come away with me. Now, one other thing. When the Talmud talks about the different names of Mashiach, it calls him, let me see if I can get this correct here, Shivara Devei Rebbe, the leper of the house of the rabbi. Why is he a rabbi? Why is he a leper? Why does he have Za'arat? Because he bore all of, this is Isaiah 53. This is what we see in Isaiah 53. That's where this came from, was Isaiah 53. I know many of them today don't want to acknowledge Isaiah 53 as being a messianic prophecy. Many of my brothers don't want to do that. But it's been ancient. From ancient days, this has been recognized that this was a representation. What happens is, because he bears all our leprosy, he bears all of our wounds, he looks like a leper. He is a leper because he's taken our leprosy upon himself. That's what he did. That's what he did. And so Mashiach will take our leprosy upon himself, and he will become Shivaru Deve Rebbe. Indeed, it says in Isaiah 53:4, our illnesses he did bear, and our pains he endured, and we esteemed him injured and stricken by God and afflicted. But in his merit, God will forgive us. So that's what our Messiah is to us. Now, the thing about Zara'at is, I want you to think with me for a while. We're going to be getting into this in a little while in the book of Leviticus as we go through our Torah studies. The weeks ahead are waiting for us. What do we know about Zara'at? What do we know about Zara'at? Well, we think of it as a condition of the skin with rises and sores and things like that arises by virtue of Lashon Hara, spoken negative words. But the funny thing about Zara'at is you don't have it until a priest declares you have it. The whole sequence is not about your condition. It is about the declaration of your condition, the recognition of your condition. This is hard to understand unless you understand why Yeshua said to Mary, don't touch me. For I have not yet risen to my Father. Why is he going to rise to his Father to be declared? He is Zara'at. You can't touch him. And what is the other thing we learn about Zara'at? How many days after the priest declares does he come back and check with you? Does he circle back? How many days before he circles back? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know the answer to this question. 7 days he circles back. In 7 days, there is a cleansing that should be taking place. That he will declare that. And so we have this interesting aspect of Zara'ah. Even after one appears to have it to himself, he is not considered impure until the Kohen sees it and verbally declares him impure. They also said, the legend is that if a person on his 7 days of his wedding feast, finds that he has these sores, or she has these sores on her skin during the 7 days of the separation of wedding, they are to continue with their 7 days of separation because they have not been declared to be unclean. This is just to highlight the point. It's a storytelling to highlight the point that what we're talking about here is a spiritual situation involving us receiving things into ourselves that are going to injure and hurt us and others around us, and then waiting to follow the instructions of the Holy One. It's about the word of the Lord. It's about living by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Holy One. It isn't Zara'at that makes the person impure. It is the declaration that does it. Until the declaration, not only is one not impure, he has a manifestation of sublime lights. Why do I say that? Because that means that the Holy One is with you and is showing the things in you that are in you. That makes any sense to you. You are in the presence, or you wouldn't be seeing these marks. This is not something that the world normally sees. It's only in the context of the tabernacle that we had Zara'at. The tabernacle, why was it in the tabernacle? Why in the era of the tabernacle did we have Zara'at? Because in that era we were very, very close to the Holy One. And his light shone on everything. And blemishes and scars and spots were very, very visible in this process. And then we're brought to the Kohen, and he was the embodiment of hesed, of kindness, of selflessness. He's the polar opposite of judgment. And the Kohen, after a 7-day recreation period, elevates the lights to sweeten the declarations and declares us to be pure. Well, here we are at the end of the 7 days. At the first of the 7 days, one thing we should all realize is we were polluted with the leaven of this world. I'm not just talking about sin patterns. I mean, I sigh when I hear people say leaven is sin. Then you're going to miss the whole point. Leaven is everything about the world and focusing on the things of this world and the nations and the ideologies and the political realm and the social science and all these different things. And focusing on that as your source, that is your leaven. And it's in you, and you come to the first day of unleavening, and you say, I'm going to separate myself from that. And now we come to the end, and he says, now, if you've truly done this, if you've been faithful of the 7 days, then I'm going to declare you to be pure. And you're going to go out and face the world again the way it started. Now, when we talk about who Mashiach is, you realize there's only 2 verses in the entire Torah, or the entire Tanakh, that actually, in a nominative sense, naming someone, refer to the Messiah. It's kind of an interesting thing. We build so much into our life about the Messiah, but actual words that say this is the Messiah are only 2, and that's in Daniel 9. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to rebuild and restore Jerusalem until Mashiach, until Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And the street will be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. And after the 62 weeks, Mashiach will be karat, cut off from his people. But not for himself, not for his own wrongdoing. And the people of the prince who has come will destroy the city and the holiness, and the end of it will be with a flood until the end of the war. Desolations are determined. That's Daniel 9. Only real reference to Mashiach as a nominative person. But let's go back to 1 Samuel 2. 1 Samuel 2 says in verse 10, the adversaries of the Holy One will be broken in pieces. From heaven he will thunder against them. The Holy One will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his, and in English you're going to read, anointed one. And exalt the king of his Mashiach. Exalt the horn of his Mashiach. And I will raise up, this is verse 35, same chapter, I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who will do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. And I will build him a sure house, and he will walk before you as Mashiach forever. Psalm 2, 2-3. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Holy One and against his Mashiach, saying, let us break their bonds, the straps of their yokes, in pieces, and let us cast away their cords from us. They know. The nations know there is one. Habakkuk 3:12. You went forth for the Yeshua, the salvation of your people. For Yeshua, salvation with your Mashiach. You struck the head from the house of the wicked by laying bare from foundation to neck. Well, those are the specific references that actually use the term Mashiach. From that, we have to draw allusions from the rest of Torah. Allusions to and hints of. Who is this Messiah? Who is our Messiah? Who is he really? Do you know him? Do you know who he is? Do you know what he does? Do you know what it's like to be in relationship with him? Do you know what it's like to converse with him? Do you know what it's like to follow him? Do you know what it's like? Do you see the allusions? What is he like to you? First allusion in Torah is Genesis 1:3, and God said, let there be light. I am the light of the world. And God said, let there be light. Yehi or. And there was light. He is your light. He is light to you. The Mashiach is your light. He is what illumines your way. He gives you some reason to get spatial distancing. Understand where you stand. Because if you don't have light, you can't see anything. You don't know how far you are from anything. You don't know what's going on around you. He is the one who gives you guidance. Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image, our cell, our shadow, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Who is Mashiach? Mashiach is the ultimate man, the one who actually does have authority over the wind and the waves, and over the animals and the creatures, over the lions to shut their mouths. He is the one who has the authority over the fire to keep it from burning you. He is the one who has the authority over the water to split the seas. He is the one. This is your Mashiach. This is Yeshua Adonai. Genesis 2:7. And the Holy One formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. He is the ultimate of the one filled with the breath of the Holy One. He represents what it looks like. And the next thing it says, and God planted a garden and put the man in it to tend it and to keep it. He is the tender and the keeper of all things. He is the one who is responsible for the welfare of the planet Earth and the universe. I sometimes hear people say that global climate change is going to destroy the world. And I see why they look at trends, and if they want to see a certain evidence, they would say that. Here's what they do not understand. There is someone who has a responsibility to maintain the integrity of this earth and of all the planets and of all the galaxies. He is responsible for maintaining it, and he will not fail in his purpose. So whatever it may look like, whatever trend you may think you see, the reality of the matter is he has been given dominion, and he has been given authority, and he is faithful to the trust. This is our Mashiach. This is our Messiah. Genesis 3:15, and I will put enmity between you and talking to the serpent. The Holy One is, I will put enmity between you and this woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he will bruise, in English, your head, and you will bruise, English, his heel. Now, isn't that interesting? Because in Hebrew, the word that we translate as bruise is suf. What's the name of the sea that we've been talking about all day? The Yam Suf. So the first fruits, the first evidence of this prophecy coming true is the Yam Suf. He says, it will be like the sea of reeds, every time you tried to get to him. And he will do to you what he did at the Sea of Reeds every time you come after him and try to strike his heel. That's our Messiah. That's our Yeshua Adonai. That's who he is. Well, it's not through yet. We're hardly through. Deuteronomy 18:15. The Holy One, your God, will raise up for you a prophet like me, Moshe says, from your midst, from your brethren. And him you are to shema, you are to tune into and get in tune with and follow the rhythms of, according to all that you ask of the Holy One your God at Horeb in the day of assembly, saying, let me not hear the voice of the Holy One my God, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. Did you just catch what that is? You know who Mashiach is? He is the eternal one who speaks on behalf of the Father because you don't want to listen. He will always speak that which you did not want to hear, did not think you could hear, in ways you can hear it, in ways you can receive it. He is the purveyor. Like Moshe was for a short period of time, he is the eternal purveyor of the truths of heaven into your life. That's our Messiah. Isaiah 7:14, the Holy One himself will give you a sign, an oath. Behold, the young woman, the Alma, will conceive and bear a son, and will call his name Emmanuel, God with us. Behold, the tabernacle of God will be with men, and he will be our God, and we will be his people. This is Immanuel. He is the one who brings heaven to earth to us, brings us into contact with the heavenly realm, gives us access to and from the heavenly realm, enables us to activate our heavenly things down here. Psalm 2, verse 6 and following. I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion, and I will declare the decree. The Holy One has said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me. I will give you the ethnicities, the nations, for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. Now therefore be wise, O kings. Be instructed, you self-appointed, you judges of the earth. Serve the Holy One with fear. Rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son. Now, nasak can really mean submit yourself to him, or lay yourself in order before him. It's more than just a kiss the Son. Present yourself, submit yourself to him appropriately, lest he be displeased and you wander in the way when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all those who put their trust in him, their emunah, their bitachon in him. Is your trust in him, or is your trust in some form of religion? Is your trust in some form of science? Is your trust in some form of medicine? Is your trust in some form of socialization? What is your trust in? Is your trust in Yeshua Adonai? If so, the waves will part for you. The way will be made for you. Redemption will come for you. Psalm 22. He has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, nor has he hidden his face from him, but when he cried, he heard. You know, if people knew what Yeshua was doing on the cross, when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? They'd have a whole different perspective, because, you see, here's the deal. All we read is that he said, Eli, Eli, why have you forsaken me? The rest of the psalm, he was quoting from Psalm 22. The rest of the psalm goes forward and says, he has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, but he has hidden his face from him. When he cried to him, though, he shemad, he heard. Now, this is the end of the story. This is what you would have heard if you really stood at the cross that day. The end of the story of Psalm 22, not just the Eli, Eli. Now, he goes on to say, a seed, Zerah, will serve him. It will be recounted, written to the Lord in the next generation. They will all come and declare his righteousness to a people who will be born that he has done this. What do you think kept Yeshua strong? Why do you think he circled back and was finished the race stronger than he began? We read in one letter from Paul, the joy set before him. Oh, but it's more than that. It's the knowledge of what was written about him, what he knows, who he is. He knows what the Holy One's response to him is going to be, and what's going to be the end result of this whole thing. The end result will be they will come and declare his righteousness to a people who yet have been born, not been born. that he has done this. Psalm 45. What I believe to be the ultimate messianic psalm. The song that we'll sing along with the Song of the Sea at the Feast of Messiah. My heart is overflowing with a good theme. I recite my composition concerning my King. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer. You are fairer than the sons of men. Grace pours from your lips, and therefore God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword upon your side, O mighty one. And in your glory and in your majesty, ride. Ride prosperously with truth, humility, and righteousness. Well, that's the psalm that we'll sing. As we enter into this seventh day and we begin to releaven, we contemplate at least releavening, what will we releaven with? What attitude will we start from? What will be our point of beginning in this new era, this new season? Will it just be a continuation, a brief interruption of the stuff we had, a 7-day hiatus? Or will we start fresh with Messiah being alive in us, awakened in our spirit? Will we know him better than the theologians know him? I mean, I don't have horrible things to say about theologians, but I want to know the Messiah 100,000 times better than the theologians know him. I don't want to just know stuff about him. I don't want you just to know stuff about him. The stuff about him is merely to awaken your heart and your passion to seek him for who he is. So as we go into the seventh day, we finish the seventh day of unleavened bread, as we begin to contemplate releavening. He is our King. He is our guide. He is our beloved. We can't do Torah without him. We can't be good citizens of earth without him. We can't be good citizens of America or South Africa or Indonesia or the Philippines or England without him. We can't be good parents, good husbands, good wives, good children, good brothers, good sisters, good relatives, good workers without seeing him, standing and seeing Yeshua Adonai, holding firm to that confidence in who he is, that majesty of what he brings to the table and what he's going to do. He is coming in his fullness. And that will not even be the end. That will be a brand beautiful new season of beginnings. He's chosen you. He's called you. He's prepared you. He's taught you. He's trained you in the ways to prepare yourself and your families for this event. Draw that inspiration. Follow him wherever he leads. Amen. Shabbat shalom. See you next week.